Hello, everyone, to EarthStar Talk. This should have been live, but unfortunately, I didn't know that you have to announce it to YouTube 24 hours before and to get permission to do some live streaming. So it's going to be recorded another time, but then the next Wednesday, it's going to be live, like a little morning show. But I had requests for questions. So I'm going to address these questions today. And the first questions come from Sandra in Atlanta. She says, in my experience is that, especially when surrounded by others, people are often too afraid to admit that they want to know more about the higher things. So unfortunately, the word spiritual, meanwhile, has a certain touch to it, so that a lot of people perceive it as negative. Is there a negative or a positive? Dear Sandra, I'm not sure. Are you relating to negative or positive spirituality, negative or positive spirits, negative or positive people who represent spirituality? Well, in regard of spirits, there can be negative or positive spirits in the sense that we are living right now in a duality. And this is here on Earth plane, artificial 3D duality, so that we can experience indeed positivity and negativity. So we are signing up for a certain theater play of life. My guiding ones are always talking about that, where the soul signs up for a role play and certain of your soul members volunteer. They're always talking about like a soul ensemble, like in a theater play. You have very beloved souls who volunteer so that you can learn or express something. But there is a law of balance, and that is shown to me that when you do something, or for example, want to be a murderer in a lifetime, which we consider a negative thing, then you in another lifetime have to be murdered. So we might not see the cause and effect in the same lifetime, but definitely when we see the bigger picture, we realize that that person who causes something will also later see the effect. Again, the effect doesn't come always in the same lifetime event. So, which leads us to time. What is time? Time is an artificial thing, which has to do with the reality we are in. There are different dimensions where we do not have to deal with time anymore, which are talk about oneness dimensions in the higher up. So 4D and 5D dimension is already different in the time realization. Time is less relevant than it is here in 3D. But there are areas where there is no more time and everything is at the same time parallel. Now, I would like to explore this concept about negativity, positive and negative, with a little example. Maybe that makes it easier to understand, because when I say theater play of life, it might, people might not necessarily understand what is said. So I asked my guiding ones the same thing when I was smaller, even though I remember lifetimes and I remember coming here and slowing down my vibration to incarnate and making decisions to incarnate into this life. Nevertheless, when I was here in my body as a child, I was asking my guiding ones, well, if God is good, why their children born sick? Why there are wars? Why? Asking questions, and asking questions good. So I encourage you, whoever listens to this, to ask questions, send them into brilliance@claudiagranger.com or earthstartalk@gmail.com. All right. So I have done a little drawing just in case this would come up. And it's about what my guiding ones were answering me to the question, what if God is good, why are there children born sick and why are there wars? They said, you are seeing things from a human perspective. In our respective here, three-dimensional perspective, where there is duality. That would be down here. So they gave me the example of a tree of life. The tree of life is the symbol of our soul. And the tree of life has fruit and flowers at the same time in what we call the God source connection. So that's the crown of the tree of our soul. And in that, everything is connected to the divine, to the oneness, to the all infinite. Then there's the trunk, symbolizing the beingness on higher realms, for example, angelic realm. Then there's the area where the tree goes into the more knobby part before it goes into Terra, into the earth, or into the lower dimensions. And there's what they call the seven heavens, where we adjust to this oneness concept of all there is. Then this is representing the lower astral levels to which we are born, where we dive in deep, and where we make ourselves forget mostly of who we really are, eternal presence, part of God. And then there are the golden soul strands animating in a soul spark, animating a body, and that would be here in the third eye center. Then we have assigned ourselves, or by the divine design of our soul, a polarity reality. And that's where the good and the bad comes in. So we have signed up to explore positive and negative traits in a artificial reality. And as you can see here, I did several of those, and some of on a higher dimension, some on a lower dimension, like 3-dimension, and they're all more or less parallel. So it's happening all at the same time. And when we talk about people who volunteer, well, how do they figure into our reality? Well, let's say there's a forest of souls or forest of trees, and they are with us in the same forest, and our realities overlap. That means as a soul, when we volunteer to participate in somebody else's theater play of life or reality in 3D, for example, here on Earth, we will overlap. I liked this synonym of a forest because, you know, in the forest, the root systems are all interconnected. You know, they're interwoven. And so our realities are interwoven. Is anything per se good or bad? I would have to say yes and no. It depends on the perspective we are looking at. For example, if you tell an actor, or an actor chooses to play a certain role, let's say of a villain, in the theater play would say, oh, this is the villain, he's really bad. But after the theater play is over, we would say, clap him on the shoulder and say, hey man, good performance. So then the role is dispersed and the true actor is there. And yes, there are some people who are in a certain role and they forget who they really are and identify themselves with the role over and over in different lifetimes. So there can be incarnations where people have been playing the villain so many times that they believe they are nothing else anymore. So they need others' time to balance. So everything is about balance in effect. Balance is essential, balance of good and bad. When we later come to the oneness, which starts with the third eye center, which starts with our higher dimensional experiences, then this oneness ends all polarity. So somebody asked me at one time, what about, you know, this discussion with the starseed? What about extraterrestrials? How do they fit into that concept? Well, very simple. Where I have my little paper there. So extraterrestrials, depending on, are they still in polarity? Are they still participating in this concept of good, bad? They might be up here. Yeah, when they come as starships. Starships are mostly 3D or 4D, sometimes 5D. So that would be higher up here. That's not completely in oneness yet. But then there are extraterrestrials, I would rather say spirit beings, who are already operating from the higher realm, from the angelic realm and beyond. So that's a higher dimensional works here. What I find is that in the body, most people, when they're just talking about or using their spirit headlight, their spirit flashlight, their spirit light, you know, that which leads, where we can see it up here. Oops, should better turn it around. Up here, then they can most likely go up to the 6th dimension, sometimes 7th dimension. It's really rare that they're in absolute bliss and oneness because their body might not be able to take it. But that's also why meditation is called the little death. So when you're able to go in absolute bliss and oneness, you probably do not want to be here in 3D anymore. You have understood the concept of good and bad, plus and minus, light and dark. And you want to be in absolute everlasting bliss. That's what we call the heavenly realms. But again, even there are stages. And this is not a religious talk here, so I let that rest and go to Sandra's continued questions. So she says, she sent me a lot, by the way. Here it is. And so is there negative and positive? So Sandra, the answer is depending on what dimension you're looking at. Do you look 3-dimensional? Yes, there is positive and negative. And there are also spiritual people talking about people in spirituality who use their greed and proclaim being spiritual, but they are not really, they're just using it as a mantle to make big bucks. We had here a case in Sedona where a person was doing a sweat lodge with hundreds of people in one sweat lodge, which was really ridiculous. Sweat lodges are supposed to be, you know, a talk with spirit and being in the womb of Mother Nature and going back to the womb experience of oneness and birthing something else, and not a mass event with hundreds of people in one huge tent where nobody knows what's what anymore. I mean, you lose when you do, for example, a sweat lodge, you lose orientation and what's up, what's down, what's right, what's left. If you're not just focusing on the fire in the center, you know, the eternal fire symbolizing here also the inner sun, the inner spark, the inner soul spark. So it can be something very sacred, but if it's misused, anything sacred can be brought to the not so positive side. And in this particular event, where this person was so greedy and invited hundreds of people, and without this fasting for an extraordinary amount of time, without access to any kind of water before, and it's logic that they got dehydrated, and some of them died trying to get out and fell in the fire and all sorts of things. So are sweat lodges good or bad? I would say sweat lodges in general are a wonderful tool to connect with spirit, but this person misused them. So they became a bad event. I hope that answers your questions. So in general, it depends on the experiences people are making. But of course, then there's also control. When a group, whether it's a religious group or another kind of group, tries to control people and say, this is the parameters you have to believe in. There's no other truth but what I am telling you. You have to believe this truth, and this truth is my truth, and I'm the one who's expelling, you know, telling the truth of all truths. I would always be a little bit careful because depending on which dimension you're in, your truth might change. And people who say there's only the truth and this truth is how I tell you it is, there's something fishy about it. And of course, people then who proclaim that to be the only truth might be a little bit more manipulative. Let's take Jesus. He didn't say, I'm proclaiming the truth. He said that, through him and through his teachings and through his fellowship, people can come to God. But he didn't say that he was the one and the only and forever to proclaim. He offered himself as a solution as a pathway. And there are a lot of teachers in this world who do that through the centuries in different areas in the world and different time frames. People proclaimed that. And with good successes, some of the gurus are really valid and they bring people to utmost spirituality and oneness. But they would not necessarily proclaim themselves in a big way because their teacher is found when the student is ready. So even that, I, for example, have put a disclaimer on in the earlier videos that everybody's supposed to make up their truth in what resonates. I'm not here to say this is the truth, folks. You have to believe how I believe and what I believe. I try to explain spirit and how spirit works. That's my job description right now. That's what spirit told me to do. And so I'm trying to do my best to do this job. But do I proclaim that you have to believe exactly like I tell you to? Absolutely not. Critical thinking is important. And another lady who wants to be anonymous asked me at one time, well, all the starseed stuff and all this supernatural and extraterrestrial and paranormal and all that, how do I know it's real? How I know it's true what people are saying? Very, very good question. So my answer would be here, resonance or self-experience. When it resonates with you, when you feel there is something in it, when you have a really physical or emotional or mental resonance with something, then you are open to accept it as your truth, your perception of truth, your reality of truth. Because when we are realizing, again, where's my little drawing? Sorry, folks. When we're realizing, here you might perceive a different truth than over here, than over here, than over here, than when you're here. That brings us to God's source. And God's source, in my book, experiences him, her, itself through the myriad of souls, through the myriad of experiences. And we are part of it. We are part of this eternity concept. We in 3D, as in 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 dimension, and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 and 13, 14, and so on. In the infinity. That's what it means, infinity. So can we grasp absolute infinity when we are here in 3D? Maybe with concepts, but in our true existence, through our soul spot, yes, most likely in meditation. But how far we can go in other meditation comes to practice. And that brings us to my guiding ones who are always saying, seeing is believing, confirmation is to practice. So they let me practice a lot in different modalities. And part of that was meditation, leaving the 3D world behind, going and focusing on the oneness by focusing on the third eye center and sometimes doing mantras. And there are many different modalities how you can learn to meditate. So coming back to Sandra, and then this lady with the truth and how we can validate and how we can know what is the truth. For people say, well, stars, even the other dimensions and reality. Again, I would say by resonance or by your own experience. So if you go out of your body and you're traveling to the other dimensions or other realities, you're seeing firsthand, you experience firsthand. How can you experience firsthand? Well, you can use your, I call it the spiritual flashlight, your third eye center, and give to the third eye center coordinates and say, I want to, like remote viewing in a higher realm, I want to go here, or I want to go there, I want to check this out, I want to check this planet out or that planet out, and you can go there in your mind's eye and see it, or you can use your ethereal body, because we don't have only a physical 3D body, we have emotional body, mental body, spirit body. And in the so-called ether body or spirit body, we can go up into different dimensions and almost like sensationally first-hand experience how does there very good, which coordinates we gave in. Yeah, and we can try to go as high as our body allows. And again, even in spirit, it works like experiencing, like using a muscle. The more you use it, the easier it is, because you created a pathway. Yeah, it's the same when you learn something in the brain, you create a neural pathway with neurotransmitter firings. So it works very similar. The cosmic brain and our physical brain have something in common. So why do people always have to perceive events as good or bad? Well, that becomes from their perspective. And who is getting outside of this triangle of experience? Let me take another piece of paper and do a little drawing here. So when we are in our reality with positive and negative traits, and we are climbing the ladder of reality, yeah, so you are living, this is your third eye center. Oops, let me do this easier. This is the third eye center, and here are the, positive is very extreme, negative is the other side. And when we do not judge anything anymore, we're going naturally up to our oneness point, to our third eye center. And from there, it's just going upwards into oneness. But when we are here, we judge everything. Oh, this person is good. Oh, this person is bad. Oh, this event is good. Oh, this event is bad. But when we start not judging, we are climbing up the steps and the ladder to oneness. And oneness starts here in the third eye center. Makes sense? I hope it does. Well, at least it does for me. So that's why people who try to make themselves better, they need this, they're on the lower rank of perception, they need this positive and negative traits to validate their life. But when you realize that this is a theater play of life, and it's just an artificial theater play, then you will start judging less. And when you start judging less, your life will get easier and easier and easier. And I think Sandra experienced something like this, because she says, putting something into a category, isn't that the way to separate all humans? Sure it is, because then they're disconnected from the oneness perception. Do you think it is possible to convince humanity that we are all one? Well, Sandra, guess why I'm doing this show? To awaken everybody to this concept that we are all interconnected and that we are all one, like in the Matrix. In the movie The Matrix, people were dreaming. They were part of an artificial reality. And when they woke up, they realized what there was. Only what I don't like about that particular movie, that they were waking up to a non-beautiful truth of attacked by some kind of intelligence, which tried to put them back for the use of things. If for the people who have seen The Matrix, they will understand what I'm saying. I do not want to go into that movie, but there's another one which is interesting, and it wishes a little bit more to what I'm trying to say with this elevator effect of awareness. And that's the movie The 14th Floor. In that movie, The 14th Floor, people designed a technology where they can upload themselves into a game or into a artificial reality, into characters which were programmed. Now, these characters which were programmed thought not about what is above them, but thought what is below them, because there were also, it was like a mirror effect going down, down, down. They could also upload themselves into their created characters, because what they were experiencing is diminished reality of what their creators did. So they could also create, and then the next generation could create 14 levels down. That's why it's called the 14th floor. And on the 14th, the lowest level, all of a sudden characters realize, wow, at the edge of our reality, there's something else. there's actually a matrix. So are we created? What are we? And they started questioning, what are we? What's going on? And then through, the character about, they try to make it enticing about murder and intrigue, and something happened. Some of the characters, by asking more and more questions, they were realizing that there was always something on top, further and higher up, above them, above their reality, above their awareness. So that's why I have the show here, to encourage you to ask questions, to go above and beyond and see what is beyond your understanding, and grasp what is beyond. Ask for that what is beyond, not to flee this reality or not to be here. I encourage people to be what I call grounded, to be here in the body and to use this reality to the best and utmost of their existence and experiences, because that's what soul wants to do, wants to have an experience. If everything would be totally blissful every day, wouldn't it be almost boring? So I believe that our souls designed our reality to have a certain experience, something very difficult and something very easy. Sometimes we are glorious. I, for example, remember many, many past lives, and in some I was good and some I was not so good, and some I was male, some I was female. I even remember existences in animals, because I wanted to see how that would feel. And I can tell you, in one of existence, I was in the body, or part of my soul was in the body of a, I'm not sure, alligator or crocodile. And I was amazed to understand how this animal had an intrinsic awareness of God's source. And our scientists would probably say, oh, from the brain capacity, that's not really possible. But I tell you, even though this animal in its limited awareness was just thinking about co-creation, eating, sunbathing, swimming, protecting the nest and the eggs, and then again procreating, but there was an inner sense of connectedness to all there is. I cannot describe it more as a sense, a certain knowing that it's at its rightful place in its rightful time, having this experience. So even that animal, which I participated into its awareness, had a connection to the all there is. And I think that leads us to the next question, Sandra, about the oneness. And coming from the same energy. Yes, we are all coming ultimately from the same energy, from this all underlying love, oneness, creation. Because if the creator or oneness or source wouldn't allow us to experience and would us all hold together in ultimate everlasting oneness and bliss, we wouldn't have an expansion. We wouldn't have these experience we are having now. And if a soul wants to have an experience, God source let it. Yeah. I love the books of Neil Donald Walsh, where he describes in this little soul in the sun. And a little soul wants to have an experience in the morning of glory, where the souls sit together with the God source. Again, it's an analogy, please. Yeah. And the the little soul asks God, what can I do to experience part of you? And am I allowed to? And God says, sure. What would you like to explore? And he said, forgiveness. And God says, well, but if you are separated from me and to explore forgiveness, you need somebody to volunteer for this experience of forgiveness. And the soul says, sure, I will remember. And yes, who would volunteer? So soul to volunteers. Sorry, Neil Donald Walsh, for paraphrasing your wonderful book here. And the little soul number 2 says, okay, but remember, I'm the same source. I'm from the same material. I'm from the same heritage as you. Then we go down into the lower vibration and I give you something to forgive. Sure, I will not forget, I will remember. So down they go into the reality, and soul 2 does something to soul 1 to forgive. And of course, soul 1 does not remember right away, because they're in 3D, in 3 dimension, where everything is a little bit more dense. And so in that density, soul 1 forgets. And so they're creating a karmic event of cause and effect, so they both are awakened and realize who they really are, eternal soul, part of the God source, walking an aspect of God on this planet, on Earth here. And then they reawaken. And that's why we're having the show actually to reawaken this understanding of who we really are, eternal soul. We are a walking aspect of God on this planet, not the perfect one, because we artificially created ourselves in parts. Yeah, some parts are here, other parts are in other lifetimes, other parts in other dimensions. So we are a multidimensional being. People who believe that their whole soul is just in this body, I would say they are mistaken, because the soul is so much vaster than it would fit in here or into this soul spark in the center of the brain. And the old Egyptians have this eye of Horus, which is actually the hypothalamus and hypophysis, and the glands, pituitary gland as well. And it looks, when you look at and cut through a brain, it looks like the eye of Horus, the third eye center. And that's why the Egyptians used the symbol for the seeing, the all-seeing, and when you can go connection into the all-seeing oneness. So other traditions talked about this too, and that's why in Buddhism, I think they have this cone-shaped symbolism of the pituitary gland, because that's like the gateway to the spirit world. So there is a connectiveness, there is a tool which can help us to uplink to all there is. I like this word uplinking because that's what it is. From feeling disconnected to uplinking again to our true self and eternity factor. So are we all coming from the same energy? Ultimately, yes. And it is existence itself. What is existence? This is a long philosophical question. But for me right now, it would be the best to describe it as the underlying eternal love of existence itself. And only we here in 3D experience it as good and bad, but even that is created out of love of the experience itself. So folks, if it's possible for you, do not judge your existence. Try to stay positive, and more positive things will come to you into the law of resonance. The next question of Sandra was, what type of energies are out there? How can we become aware of them? I think I covered that a little bit by the meditation and paying awareness of our senses. And our senses are, we have the 5 senses of tasting and smelling and hearing and seeing, but then we have an extrasensual sense, and it's in the ether body, in our energy body. Yes, there is the link here with our glands, pituitary gland, and so on, but there are also chakra energy sensors, which we can use like invisible antennas. And then there is the heart space. This is that goes beyond an organ, it's an energy center as well, which is connecting us to that's the calibration between soul. And the soul oftentimes speaks not just through our seeing, but also through our sensation of feeling. If something feels right, feels good, feels bad. That would be a very abbreviated expression. And then we have the solar plexus, where we are interconnected in this web here on 3D with all the people. And that's why we're sometimes feeling a person or sensing a person pushing back at us, or we want to push back from them because of the sensation of how their energetic makeup is in this 3-dimensional world. So to talk about all the senses, that would take up a whole other show, and maybe I will circle that and talk more about the senses and how we can use our senses to be more aware. But in general, the word awareness, I would say, would do the trick right now, by awareness, like what do I feel, what do I sense, what do I know, what can I see, using the five senses also in an extra sensory way, not just what do I see here on this piece of paper where the Sandra's questions are on, but what do I see beyond that, or aura seeing. You know, some people can see auras, other people cannot. Why is that? Because they train themselves to see in between the worlds using their glandular structure here in the brain to go beyond. That would be energy seeing, aura seeing, and so on. So we can train the five senses to go into the extra sensory senses as well, to go into the ether senses, if you so want to say it. What are our additional senses we have never been noticed and used before? Yes, they have been noticed. They always have been visionaries who could go out of the polarity of the time frame, yeah, and see into the higher realities and climb up and see beyond time and space, and beyond this artificial time and space, beyond this artificial reality. And these visionaries could then go and see beyond this artificial bubble of our reality and see cause and effect beyond that. You know, that starts again here when you are in your non-judgmental state. And even if you're not there yet, there are these practices along the way. And in my upcoming seminar, Fast Track to Your Psychic Capacities, I will address all these things about the extrasensory perceptions and how you can be clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, and use your extrasensory perceptions. So yes, they have been used forever and a day, since the beginning of time, because remember, when we tone ourselves down from spirit into more 3D form, we were beyond these senses. So we have a remembrance of them, and if we cultivate them, we still have access to them, because we are not just simple 3D body, we also have an emotional and mental and spirit body. And the spirit body, that's where most of our extrasensual perception come from. How can we start using them? Again, time is running out for my 45-minute show. Thank you, by the way, listeners, for coming so far, because it is most likely taking energy to follow all this, what we are talking about here. So I think, Sandra, we need to have a second part to this discussion. So how we can start using them, I would say meditation and paying attention. And the other thing would be not to judge the circumstances, but to see, okay, it is. And one of the things I like to say is, well, whatever happened to me, what I feel happens to me in 3D right now, is it important in the bigger picture of things? Is it important in 5 years? Yes or no? If it's not important in 5 years, why should it be so important right now? Yeah. To give it the event, to give an event the order it is deserving. Yeah, if it's a huge event which is life-changing, then yes, if it's still validating in 5 years, then yes, pay it more attention. If it's something where you get angry in the moment, embrace it and say, okay, it is like this right now, but it will not be relevant in 5 years anymore. So yeah, give it the place it deserves. So try not to be too judgmental, and that helps to let things go. And letting go, you had here in your question there something about letting go, and I think I will circle that to the letting go for another time, because that's a whole topic on its own. So Sandra, you have a lot of questions, but they will not all be able to be answered in 45 minutes. And so one question I want to address, because it creates a nice closing. Energy coming from the heart is even more powerful. How we can better use this power during our daily lives? Well, that depends on how open your heart chakra is. And a person whose heart chakra is not open doesn't even know that the heart chakra isn't open. So how can we open our heart chakras? Well, to try to like and love in small steps. For example, if you do not like people, maybe you like an animal or love an animal even. If you don't like even animals and you hate this world, then maybe love a plant, enjoy sunshine on a glistening water body or stream or lake. Find enjoyment. To open the heart is to ask, what brings me joy? Joy and heart opening are very strongly interconnected. I just got my gong here that I have to prepare for my next work session. So I leave you with this little task. See what brings you joy. See in the small things of everyday life what can bring you joy to be able to open your heart more. In my particular personal experience, to me, a big heart opening happened at the birth of my son. It was one of the most extraordinary moments in my life to have my heart walk out of my body on two little feet. Undescribable in my perception. But other things, can be very heart opening too. It can even be through a shock experience where we witness something drastic and our heart goes out to them empathically, feeling the pain and suffering and sending them positive thoughts. That can also be a heart opening experience. With that said, I hope we can keep our hearts and minds open to more learning and awakening. Have a fantastic day, everybody. And thank you for watching this. Bye-bye.